Welcome to Pandora's Awareness Podcast, a place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. I'm your host, Asher, and our guest today is Marie. And you're here because we get to talk about dreams. We get to focus on some of those big things that you'll find so valuable in your life. So, Marie, if you don't mind telling us where you're hailing from, what you specialize in, how you're adding value to the world, and who you're being a hero to.
Well, I'm from Northern California. My name is Marie Hoäg, and I've settled in Northern California for a little bit in Chico,
Mm,
but I've certainly been around, moving around. I, when I saw that, heard this podcast was about dreams, it was really, it really got me thinking about my own dreams and what brought me to where I am today. And what I do right now is I educate physicians how to prescribe hormone replacement therapy for women.
mm,
There's a shortage of physicians who know how to write prescriptions or who know how to properly dose hormones for women. But I've been a clinical hormone coach working with physicians for the past couple of decades. And there's been quite an evolution in female hormone medicine where there just really hasn't been a consensus on true female hormonal balance. And when I was thinking about dreams and allowing women for helping women have their dreams come true, and that's really who I serve is educating women on how to um, get access to the good hormone replacement therapy they need. I had a hard time dreaming
mm,
and even putting together my own dreams when I didn't have enough estrogen. And it wasn't until after working for a couple of years in a hormone clinic, watching women start to really thrive and become the women that they've always wanted to be when they got enough hormones, it really, really fascinated me. And for me, it opened up a Pandora's box with
mhm,
um, what is possible. And when I got my hormones and I got enough estrogen, I found that I was able to have dreams and to not only dream about my future and what it is I wanted to do, I now felt like that I was capable of doing it. Without estrogen, there's just women have a hard time with their self confidence and being self reliant and even putting together dreams for themselves because they just don't know how they're going to feel from one day to the next. And I think that's one of the most fascinating parts about female hormone balancing is how it changes the brain of a woman and her creative juices. And so um, that's why I've been so fascinated with this field of medicine.
mm. Okay, so if you had to like label or define estrogen like an energy source, like how would you break it down for people to really understand it? For those that don't know what it is, really.
Well, estrogen for women, like testosterone is for men, it is a woman's main sex hormone. It tells a woman's brain and body how to function, how to feel, how to think, how to behave. Everything in the female body from head to toe is dependent upon estrogen. Without enough estrogen, women can't depend on themselves. They don't dream because they don't think that they can do it. When women are low in estrogen, they have low self-esteem, low self-worth, low self-confidence. They can't rely on themselves because they never know from one moment to the next what their mood is going to be like. They have a hard time coping. Their coping skills are in the toilet. And when they restore their estrogen and they get enough estrogen, it changes how a woman sees herself in the world. It increases her self-confidence. It increases her creativity. And this is one of the fascinating thing to me is it allows a woman to dream again. She starts to think about her future. She knows that she's able to do those things because her brain is consistent. She She can understand things that she reads. She can follow instructions. She can plan. But without estrogen, women have a hard time dreaming about the future and putting together a plan for themselves, mostly because they don't know how they're going to be or feel. And a lot of the crazy that women are tagged with, that women are crazy, it's women who are estrogen deficient that tend to behave that way. But when a woman has the stability of her emotions and her cognition and brain function, it allows her to dream. It allows her to create. It allows her to create the future of her dreams. So I find it to be a very fascinating hormone.
Mm. So then what actually destabilizes estrogen in a woman?
Well, yeah, I've been in this field for a couple of decades now and have noticed an evolution in female hormone medicine and the different reasons why women become estrogen deficient. Years ago, we didn't talk about giving women estrogen until they were in menopause,
Mm.
when a woman loses her menstrual cycle. And that's when conventional medicine, okay, now we'll give you a little bit of estrogen. But now, over the past couple of decades, we've noticed a trend in women losing their menstrual cycles due to estrogen deficiency for many different reasons. One, endocrine disrupting chemicals, eating processed foods, chemicals that shut down the ovaries from producing estrogen. But also, we live in a generation now where most young women don't produce enough estrogen at puberty, and they go through their adult life estrogen deficient. Women are handed down their ovaries, the health of their ovaries, from their mother. And most women have ovaries that underproduce hormones. And then those women give birth to daughters whose ovaries don't work. And we're about 4 or 5 generations deep with what we call the transgenerational inheritance of ovarian dysfunction. So I inherited my mother's broken ovaries, who inherited her broken ovaries from her mother, and so on and so forth. So my daughter has horrible menstrual cycles. And that's how a woman would knows whether she has enough estrogen or not, is the quality of her menstrual cycles. So most young women in this day don't have healthy menstrual cycles. And that's a sure sign, tell that a woman doesn't have enough estrogen. So it used to be age, but
Mm.
now young women don't even produce enough estrogen and progesterone when they're going through puberty. So this is why you see a lot of depression and mental illness diagnoses in young women that didn't used to exist before, because estrogen really dictates the mental stability of a woman.
Mm. You remind me of two of my friends right now, and they're focused on this area too. But I remember one of them was she was telling me that when she was going to some she was in the military like me too, and she was like in one of the training times she was on a cycle for like 9 months straight, and she couldn't understand why it was like that. So how would you like what would you say to that?
Well, I tell you, she wasn't happy. I can tell you that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Women who have periods that are never ending is a sign of estrogen deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Estrogen regulates everything in the female body, from digestion to menstrual cycles, circadian rhythm, brain function. Everything is dependent upon estrogen. Women with plenty of estrogen have healthy, regular menstrual cycles, 28-day to 30-day menstrual cycles, with a period bleed from about 3 to 5 days, and it shuts off by day 6 because estrogen increase is high enough to shut down the blood flow. If
Mm-hmm.
estrogen doesn't get high enough in the follicular phase of a woman's cycle, then she will continue to have a period, or she won't have any periods at all. But it's not just having these weeks and months long periods, it's the mental instability. It's the low self-esteem, the low self-worth, the mood swings, the feeling horrible all the time, the depression, anxiety, insomnia, joint pain, low energy, weight gain, acne, um, inability to cope. These are all things that women are susceptible to when they lose estrogen. And so if a woman doesn't have a healthy menstrual cycle, then that's the best time to go get your hormones checked, and not from a general practitioner. I mean, somebody who really understands how to restore a healthy menstrual cycle with hormone therapy. They don't teach hormones in medical school, hormone
Mm.
replacement, especially in medical school. So when women are having these problems, they're put on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. That's a cocktail of psychotropic drugs and other things to manage the side effects of estrogen deficiency. But doctors are not taught how to restore estrogen. They're taught how to manage the symptoms of estrogen deficiency. And that's where I think it's all backwards. And that's why I do what I do. The more women understand how their brains and bodies work according to their estrogen levels, the more they can take the bull by the horns and find themselves a doctor who knows how to fully restore hormones for them so they don't have the same problems as your friend had. There's no reason for a woman to go that long with a period or to go that long without a period.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's not just, and I really want to emphasize, it's not about the period so much as it is all the other things, the mental illness diagnoses, the low energy, the lack of libido, lack of energy, the most of the things that women experience that are negative, whether it's mental or physical, have some sort of correlation to estrogen. If it's not working right, then chances are it's estrogen deficiency. If it's working well, then chances are the hormones are good.
Mm. So what is the putback? The put back in the body, the put back in the system. What is what they can use to put back that thing that source of energy back into their system?
How do you get estrogen back into the system?
Hmm.
Hormone replacement therapy. Well, first you want to check to see if the ovaries are working right. We used to do that about 15 years ago. First thing we would do is we would do an ovarian function analysis. Are the ovaries working? If they're working, if they're not working well, can we get them to work better? And then we would hold off on hormone replacement therapy while we're getting the ovaries to work. Once it's been determined that the ovaries have shut down and they're not able to produce estrogen and progesterone any longer, then a woman would want to intervene and take hormone replacement therapy. And there are different ways to take hormone replacement therapy. There's different types of hormones women can take, but the two main sex hormones women should take with a women with a uterus is estrogen and progesterone. And those are the two hormones that regulate the menstrual cycle for women. And estrogen can be prescribed, can be taken in different ways. It can be done through a transdermal cream. It can be done through a patch, a transdermal patch, or it can be done by a weekly injection. And progesterone can be taken by a transdermal cream or an oral pill or, um, yeah, an oral medication. And
Is
so
there
with
anything? No, I was going to ask, is there anything natural for it?
that's about as natural as you can get.
Mm.
These hormones are typically plant-based from a Mexican wild yam, but there is, once it's been deemed that the ovaries are not able, that's the most natural form. Can you get the ovaries to work? And if a woman has on a good farm to table diet with no processed foods, off of medications, she can preserve her ovaries for quite a while. Well, we used to be able to say that, but we can't really say that now because, like I said, most even millennials, these past couple of generations, they've been handed down broken ovaries from their mothers.
Mm.
And so they don't produce enough hormones at puberty to make it through their pubescent transition into their reproductive prime. So most young women now just never have a healthy menstrual cycle. And then what happens is they're put on psychotropic drugs to manage the symptoms of these hormone deficiencies. So when a young woman says, I'm having horrible periods and I'm depressed and have anxiety, well, they're put on birth control pills, which puts a young woman in chemical menopause. And then they're put on psychotropic drugs to manage the symptoms of hormone deficiency. So the most natural thing a woman can do is to get on bioidentical estrogen and progesterone. That's the most natural way.
Hmm. No, you educate me right now, by the way.
Well, and the thing with I think with men, it's and everything that I talk about with women and estrogen holds true with men and testosterone. One of
Hmm.
the reasons we see young men, and one of the reasons we see our younger populations with gender neutrality is because they're not producing enough of their main sex hormones during puberty. We're seeing young men in periandropause, the years leading up to male menopause. We're seeing young women in their 20s in perimenopause, and they're not even old enough to have perimenopause, which is the years leading up to menopause. I had a young woman contact me a couple of weeks ago, and she was 28. And she says, I was having breakfast with my mother and my grandmother, and all three of us were complaining about the same problems. And my mother's in perimenopause and my mother's in menopause, and I have the exact same symptoms, and I don't have regular periods. And I feel like at 28, I feel like I'm in perimenopause. And
Hmm.
this is very common. We used to not consider hormone therapy for anybody under 50, but it women need hormone therapy a lot younger than 50. And so usually one of the questions that I get asked is, well, when does a woman start hormone therapy? Like, well, is there an age that's too young? Well, the short answer is no. I mean, once it's been determined that a woman's ovaries can't produce enough estrogen and progesterone, well, you can't just leave her deficient for years and then have irregular periods for years. Not it, like I said, it's not just that; it's the mental illness diagnoses that women get that are brought on by estrogen deficiency. But 85% of the mental illness diagnoses that women get have a direct correlation to estrogen deficiency. So if you can restore those estrogens, and that was the case for me. I mean, I was one appointment away from shock therapy. I was
Hmm.
35 and had two babies under 3. And I was told, well, I had been on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication since I was in my late teens. And I had been on various amounts of psychotropic drug cocktails. I was told you're clinically depressed, you have bipolar disorder, you have anxiety, take these medications. And I took them. And then I met a doctor who says, well, I don't think you really have mental illness like you've been told. I think you're estrogen deficient. And we took labs, and I took my labs and I showed I had estrogen deficiency, progesterone deficiency, testosterone deficiency. And my doctor said, if we restore these hormones, I don't think you'll need these medications. And that was the case. But I was there. My conventional doctor told me, you're going to need shock therapy because you're out of psychotropic drugs. You've been on them all.
Hmm.
And that was devastating for me because I was only 35. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't imagine this. I've got babies to raise here. And I didn't feel like I had mental illness. I mean, I was depressed. That was horrible to try to raise babies when you don't feel like you can get out of bed, or you have anxiety or mood swings and yelling at your kids all the time and always on edge and yelling at my husband. I mean, a woman without estrogen is not happy. And then nobody in her life is happy because she's not happy. And then I finally got a taste of some estrogen, and I thought I died and gone to heaven. I'd never, when I look back on it now, knowing what I know in my research in estrogen and estrogen deficiency diseases, I'd spent the majority of my life without estrogen. And I bought the diagnoses of mental illness for years. I haven't been on a psychotropic drug or a mental illness medication, or I've had mental illness since I restored my estrogen. And now everybody in my life is happy. They know what they get from me. I don't have mood swing, never a mood swing. What you see is what you get all the time. That may not be good for some people, but it's nice to live a life where I can depend on my moods. I know how I'm going to feel tomorrow. I know how I'm going to feel when I wake up in the morning. I know I'm going to be able to do what I want to do and not have to worry about it. So when I go to plan my dreams, I know that 2 weeks from now, a month from now, 2 months from now, I'm going to feel just as good and just as passionate and just as capable for those dreams. And being a clinical hormone coach, working with hormone doctors, I help women achieve that transition so they can build their own dreams because they get their brain back, they get their mind back, they get their self-confidence back. And that's why I come on podcasts, is to let women know you don't have to buy into that well, mental illness does exist, but there's mental illness brought on by estrogen deficiency, and then there's mental illness.
Wow. So here where I'm at right now. I'm looking at I wrote some stuff down. I'm thinking about it, like the courage juice, the confidence juice, right? The thing that keeps you going. And without that, I can see how women really have a difficult time connecting to who they really are. Because look how lost you would be if your GPS is off. And it
You're
seems
so
like,
right.
mm-hmm,
That whole Women without estrogen have a lack of ability to connect to their inner being.
mm-hmm,
They have an inability to connect with other people on an emotional level, that interconnectedness. Women who are estrogen deficient don't send out pheromonal messages to men of the opposite sex with the equivalent testosterone. And when I
mm.
was a kid, I used to be able to see the chemistry exchange between a feminine woman and a masculine man.
Break that
And
down again. You said a woman that doesn't have the right kind of signal to send out to the right kind of men. Like break that down. You just whatever you just said just really make a lot of sense just now.
so the chemistry between men and women is a pheromonal exchange. They're pheromones. It's a type of hormone signaling that takes place between testosterone and estrogen.
Mm-hmm.
When women have low estrogen, they don't send out chemical messages of "I'm in business, my shingle is out, I'm um, uh, interested in having sex." Estrogen deficiency lowers a woman's libido. It actually pulls her out of her reproductive prime. When a woman is out of her reproductive prime, she doesn't have a libido. She doesn't have a sex drive. She doesn't want to have sex. Not only does she not want to have sex, she doesn't want to be touched. Just the touch can be repulsive to them. They, men with testosterone will repel them. And women, when you bring estrogen on, it gives her a libido. The level of estrogen, for example, my level of estrogen tells my brain that I'm in my reproductive prime. So when I am in a room with a man with the same level of testosterone that is the equivalent of my estrogen,
Mm-hmm.
there will be a pheromonal exchange that can take place even across the room, but not to a man who's testosterone deficient. He does not have that pheromonal exchange. It's not reciprocal. And so, and then men with low testosterone don't have a libido, and they're not interested in being touched, and they don't want to connect with women. But when a man has reproductive levels of testosterone and a woman has reproductive levels of estrogen, those two hormones together are complementary, and there's a pheromonal exchange.
Mm.
Without these two hormones, there's just no pheromonal exchange, and there's no libido, there's poor orgasms, there's the vagina. Sexually speaking, when women are estrogen deficient, they don't have a sex drive. The vagina shrivels up into the vaginal abyss. Their clitoris goes into hiding. They don't like to be touched. They're not stimulated by any sort of visual response, sexual response. Their orgasms are poor if they have any at all. They usually cringe at the thought of being touched. And it's because when a woman's hormones are low, it sends the message to her brain that she's old.
Mm.
So there is a physical and mental living, decaying transition that takes place to the brain and body. When you restore hormones that mimic a woman in a reproductive prime, then there's like a type of mental and physical reversal that the body is trying to get back into that reproductive prime. So the woman's body changes shape and tries to mimic a younger body. So it's easier for women to lose weight. They have energy. They develop their muscle tone again because the brain is under the impression the woman has to give birth, even though she won't. When a woman's out of eggs, she's out of eggs. So, for example, I'll be 60 next month. My hormones on paper tell my brain that I'm in my reproductive prime. So it's easy to lose weight. I have a libido. I have strong orgasms. I can send a pheromonal exchange. And it doesn't matter how old the male is with higher testosterone levels. So he can be a young guy with high testosterone levels and sense the pheromonal exchange, or he can be an old guy who's taken testosterone that will sense the pheromonal exchange. So the the understanding here is that your hormone levels tell your brain where you are in your lifespan. If your hormones are low, yours, meaning men or women, men's main sex hormone being testosterone and a woman's being estrogen, if those hormones are low, the messaging to the brain is that you're getting old and your body goes into this state of decline, physical decline, mental decline. The processes in the body start to shut down. But when you restore those hormones that mimic somebody younger, you don't have to be young for that. The body tries to respond to the hormone messaging to the brain. And so it's quite fascinating. So there's a type of reversal, and you have to be careful with what you say because people will freak out. You can't reverse. Well, actually, you can. If you pay attention and you restore hormones, both men and women, there is a type of physical and mental restoration that takes place to varying degrees depending on how deficient a person has allowed themselves to be. Because when we lose our hormones, the tissues of the body begin to deteriorate. The heart, the muscles, all the organs go into an atrophy and a deterioration process. And the longer a person goes without their main sex hormone, the more damage takes place. It's like women who have been in menopause for a while, their organs are shutting down, their tissues are shutting down. This is why it's important to start hormone therapy the moment a woman realizes that she is hormonally deficient and she's decided she's no longer going to have children. That's the best time for a woman to start hormone therapy. That way, the tissues and the organs don't shut down in the same way they do when they're estrogen deficient. So there's a type of longevity of the physical body and the brain. So
Mm.
I just,
This is what you just did. I'm understanding now. When you start breaking down the pheromones and the connection and the signals, that's language that I can understand as a man. When you start to describe how that works, because now I can see how it doesn't work for certain women or it doesn't work for certain men when those things are absent. I can see why there's confusion around like who I am in the world because those things are absent or they're destable. So then a guy is confused and a girl is confused because those things are absent. So that makes sense now for me.
I tell you, it's important for men to understand this. Like, where's your woman? What are her hormone levels? I mean, if I was a guy and I was dating a woman, especially in her 30s, I'm like, okay, you're going to need to show me your labs. Your estrogen is going to need to be over 300 if you want to hang with me, because I want to make sure that you're going to want to be touched because I want to
Hmm.
connect with you. And if you don't have the ability to connect, that's going to be lonely for me. It's like my
Hmm.
daughter's boyfriend. It's like, you know what? You can't have my daughter in the later part of her menstrual cycle, her estrogen is low. I mean, you can't really require the same things out of her in her luteal phase as she does the follicular phase, the beginning of her cycle when her estrogen is the highest.
Hmm.
So the smartest thing a man can do if he really wants to connect with a woman is understand where she is in her menstrual cycle, but also be a support source. Like I told my daughter's boyfriend, is like, listen, if you want my daughter's brain to work right, feed her healthy food. Don't feed her processed food. When y'all go out, don't go out to Big Al's Drive-In and get burgers and fries.
Hmm.
You want a good farm to table diet with unprocessed food, with plenty of animal meats and animal fats, and go
Hmm.
exercise, go on a hike in Bidwell Park, go someplace. Don't just sit around and watch movies on your phones and sit around all the time. Physical activity is important for hormonal balance. So is a good farm to table diet. So understanding a woman's menstrual cycle and where she is with it is is a really good tool for men to understand and to know if your girl doesn't want to be touched, or if she is moody and has mood swings,
Hmm.
chances are she doesn't have enough estrogen. It's not because it's you. Of course it could be, but for the most part, women tolerate a lot more from other people
Hmm.
when they have estrogen. They're more forgiving. They're nurturing. Estrogen is the nurturing hormone, it's the compassionate hormone, it's the forgiving hormone, it's the submissive hormone. I mean, I know feminists aren't going to like that too much, but it allows a woman to truly be a feminine woman.
Mm,
Without it, women don't feel like women. They're almost like eunuchs. They don't feel feminine. They don't feel pretty. They just don't feel like a girl. I
mm.
mean, I remember the first time when I got a first taste of estrogen. I'm like,
What were your age?
well, it reminded me when I was younger, when I was in college, when I was going out with my girlfriends and we were going out to the bear to go dancing, and my
Hmm.
girlfriends would come over and we put on our makeup together, and that was like in my early 20s when in the follicular phase of my cycle when I was producing some estrogen. When I started hormone therapy, I was um, therapeutic dose therapy. There's different types of hormone therapy, but when I got a taste of the good stuff, I was probably 37.
Hmm.
I could not believe what had come over me.
Hmm.
I felt so good that I could not imagine not being happy. I was just happy for no real good reason. And I made plans to go out with my girlfriends. And I'm calling my girlfriends going, why don't you guys come over and put our makeup on together? I mean, I'm like, I can't believe I'm saying this. And turn up the
Hmm.
music. I mean, it was just, I remember taking a moment thinking, I like being a girl. And I could, and I remember, sat for a moment and I thought, I have not felt that way in years, where I actually liked being a girl. And I was going through my closet and looking for something girly to wear. And I just felt good. And as each day passed after I started the hormone therapy, I felt just as good as I did the day before. And
Hmm.
I slept through the night and I woke up with energy and I wasn't depressed. And the same thing happened the next day and the next day and the next week and the next week. And I'm like, my kids started making comments like, Mom, are you all right? And I would say, what do you mean? They're like, well, you haven't been angry in a long time. Like the things that would normally make you mad aren't making you mad. How come you're not like mad, snapping into a rage, or, I just didn't do that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess I used to do that a lot. And
Mm,
I actually felt for the first time like I was who I was and not my conditions, my depression, my anxiety, my mood swings, my irrational behavior. My responses were now proportionate to the situation at hand. And I was handling things calmly, rationally. Like, oh, that happened. Oh, what a bummer. And my son would be like, Mom, that would have just set you off.
mm,
And so I just, then there was a point I had to sit my kids down and say, okay, those hormones I'm always talking about at work, I'm taking them now. And then there was a point where my daughter just wanted to make sure that every morning she made sure I took hormones because my kids liked me who I was. And I said, finally, my kids get to know who I am. They get to see me. They get to see me, not this crazy woman that I felt that I was fighting every day because it was crazy.
mm. If you
I
had to
get
take
very
us back,
very passionate about it, as you can see, because it's just been so life changing for me that I did make it my life's mission. And my dream is to educate women that they actually have more control over their own dreams and their own future than they've been led to believe. And it takes a good hormone doctor. And because I've filled almost every hormone doctor I've worked who I know understands how to restore female hormones, that I spend most of my time educating physicians how to prescribe hormone replacement therapy for women so they can get enough hormones.
mm,
So so that's my dream, and that's where I'm going with this. And I encourage women who feel like that they just can't cope, or they can't even put together a dream, or don't feel like it will ever come true. Yeah, women want a dream, but they also feel like it'll never come true, mostly because they can't depend on themselves and they can't even put two thoughts together to put a plan together, for crying out loud.
so if you had to take us back in history before this purpose was birthed, what you used to do for a living?
What did I used to do for a living?
Hmm. before this new purpose that you're pursuing now?
Um, well, what I did for a living was I was in the dental field,
Hmm.
and my career evolved when I was a dental assistant, and then I specialized in orthodontics. But then I started to realize that I was really good at business. I was good at dental practices and medical practices, and them thriving and putting them together like businesses instead of practices so they
Hmm.
could actually generate a revenue. And so my career evolved into consulting, dental practice and medical practice consulting. And that's what I was doing before I got into hormone replacement therapy. When I met a hormone doctor, I was actually consulting for a dentist who worked next
Mm.
door at the the doctor who did hormone therapy. And when I realized um, what was happening to me, that I really didn't have these mental illnesses I was tagged with at such a young age, that all I needed was estrogen, I wanted to work with this doctor. I wanted to build a business around it because it was consistent. And so I started working, specializing in helping physicians open hormone clinics and hormone replacement therapy, and teaching them how to prescribe female hormone replacement therapy. So that's just kind of how that's evolved, going from consulting dental practices to be to um, learning how to be a hormone coach, working with patients taking hormone therapy, because it takes taking hormone therapy as a process. I mean, when you fully restore hormones, like when a woman starts off like me, where I had no hormones, you look at my labs and it was like not even traceable amounts on the lab work. When you give a woman hormones, you have to give her a little bit at a time, a low therapeutic dose. And then it takes about 3 to 4 months, 3 to 4 cycles for the body to adapt to that dose. And then you have to have a dosing increase, and then the body adapts to that dose. And as each dosing increase happens, the woman responds, and they feel better and better and better. And so my job as a clinical hormone coach was to hold their hand through this process. So it takes a few months for the body to fully utilize the dose. But as each month passes, that a woman is able to utilize her hormones, she makes a transformation. So almost like each month, she gets healthier mentally and physically, and healthier and healthier. And she starts to believe in herself to a point where there's this a clicking in the brain, usually in about somewhere between the fourth and the sixth month, where a woman is a different woman. The conversations, like if you saw a woman before she made this, we call it the crossover in the clinic, where we talk about the patient. Has the patient crossed over yet or no? Because this a woman who doesn't have enough estrogen, the dialogue is different. The conversations are different. How you explain things to the patient is different. Once they have enough estrogen, you're dealing with a different brain. You're dealing with a confident woman, a woman who understands what you're saying, a woman who's rational. Hey, how about that? A woman who's rational.
We're looking for that. We're looking for that. So if somebody listen to you right now and wondering what's that financial journey like for this process to return, like what does that look like for a woman?
Well, this kind of hormone therapy isn't covered by insurance.
Mm.
So there's different types of hormone therapy. There's low dose and therapeutic dose. The low dose patches, when a woman goes to her doctor and says, give me hormone therapy, most doctors don't have never gone to medicals, who've never gone to any sort of taken any class in how to restore hormones. They usually open up the sample packet, read the package insert for instruction, and then repeat what they read on the package insert to the patient. They don't really know what they're doing. They're just like, here, take this dose. This is apparently where you're supposed to start. And there's about 3 or 4 different dosing levels, but then there's a maximum dose. But that maximum dose from the conventional doctor who takes insurance is still too low.
Hmm.
It helps with symptoms for a little bit. This is why when women are on patch therapy and low dose therapy, it works for a while, but it stops working. It stops working because the brains and bodies of women require so much more than that low dose therapy. But that's what insurance covers. Therapeutic dose HRT, doctors have to step outside of that box, they actually get training in how to prescribe hormone therapy that restores the healthy menstrual cycle. The low patch therapy doesn't restore a healthy menstrual cycle because the dose is still low. The patient is still estrogen deficient. And then they're still prescribed psychotropic drugs to manage the symptoms of estrogen deficiency that otherwise wouldn't exist if the hormones were fully restored with a therapeutic dose HRT system, such as injections, like weekly injections. Like my estrogen, I take a weekly injection of estrogen,
Mm-hmm.
and I cycle my progesterone days 14 through 28. So I recreate the menstrual cycle on my own. I've taken over what my ovaries no longer do. And so when you cycle hormones this way, you give women enough estrogen and enough progesterone, and you cycle it in a way that her body that mimics the natural physiology of a woman's body, then you can restore a healthy menstrual cycle in women.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm 60 and I still have a menstrual cycle. Women, as long as a woman's brain believes she's in her reproductive prime, then it tries to preserve itself closely to that as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So doctors who do this therapeutic dose HRT systems, they don't and can't take insurance because it steps outside of conventional medicine standards of care. But it's more cost effective because now you're not on medications to manage the symptoms of estrogen deficiency that women pay for co-pays for, and they pay more for insurance because of all these conditions now that need to be managed.
Mm-hmm.
So usually when women get on therapeutic dose estrogen, they change to their insurance because they don't go to the doctor anymore. Their brains and bodies aren't falling apart. So it's more cost effective in the long run for them to pay. And you can pay doctor's visits. Usually the initial visit for a doctor's appointment for the initial visit can range anywhere between, say, $500 to $1,500, depending on the doctor. Follow-up visits are somewhere around $200, somewhere around there, about once every 4 months. Hormone replacement therapy is typically covered by insurance. Lab work is covered by insurance. And that's pretty much the cost. And some doctors have programs where you'll pay for an end result. So programs can be anywhere between $2,000 and $5,000 to get started. And then the maintenance is just your hormones and a couple doctor's visits a year. So in the long run, everybody benefits when women have enough hormones. Everybody in the family, everybody. So I look at this and I tell women who are considering hormone therapy, you need to look at restoring your hormones as a family expense. It needs to be in the family budget because this isn't a you thing. It's everybody benefits when women have enough estrogen.
No, I can see your education process. No, I'm trying to figure out if somebody listening trying to figure out your implementation process as far as if they're going to have to do it. Do they go through you or is like what are your sources like? Like how does that work out for them?
Well, I'll tell you, if you want to know, I offer a free consultation to answer these questions because they can be pretty individual in a person's particular situation.
Mm-hmm.
Not all women do well on hormone therapy. Women who do best on hormone therapy are the healthiest. If you're healthy, you're going to do pretty well. Women who are over 20 pounds overweight or have gut problems, gut dysbiosis, it's a little more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So I offer a free consultation on my website, menopausemoxie.com. And then I'll review lab work if somebody has them and let them know where they are and then what they can do at that point, where they can go. I work with a network of physicians across the country that I refer patients to work with. So, and each doctor has a different specialty. Like one doctor will be good at thyroid and estrogen, and the other one weight loss. So I just recommend if um, just do the free consultation. I mean, it's like get your questions answered, and then I'll steer you in the right direction on what would be a good plan for you.
Mm. What was the website again?
menopausemoxie.com.
Menopause Moxie. Okay, I see. Menopause Moxie. I like the way you spell it.
Yeah, I
Menopause.
spelled it that way because there is no menopause for women who restore their hormones. Like I never plan on going into menopause in my lifetime. It's
Okay,
just,
so you're saying you're 60 right now and you're still behind the curve?
yes,
Mm.
yes, because now I control my periods. I control my menstrual cycle because of how I take my hormones and how much I take. So I take
Mm.
a therapeutic dose that mimics a woman that's in her reproductive prime, not an old lady dose, the low dose.
Okay, okay. So back up, back up, back up. Let me see if I can understand this. So you're saying that you can push out the menopause as far as possible. Like you say
Forever.
you can push up. Wow.
Yeah, see, women are under,
What's
see,
what okay, so what's the advantage? Because I thought
that's a good
some people
question.
yeah, what's the advantage of having it
Why would I
ahead of
want to
you?
have a period forever? That's usually the question I ask. It's not, well, a menstrual cycle and a period are two different things. A menstrual cycle is the estrogen and progesterone cycled in a way that mimics a young reproductive woman.
Mm-hmm.
A period is the monthly period bleed that a woman gets for about a week every month.
Mm-hmm.
So even a woman who's had a hysterectomy who doesn't have a uterus can restore a healthy menstrual cycle. So, but the woman with a uterus will regulate a regular period bleed with the hormones. And the benefit to that, and like I said, women say, why would I want a period forever? It's the period when a woman has enough estrogen and progesterone, the healthy amount, there are no negative side effects, or very few. There's no PMS. That's how you know you don't have enough estrogen, is when there's PMS. There's no headaches, no migraines, no pelvic inflammation, no blood clots, no irregular periods. Those things are out the window. That's how you know you have enough hormones. Um, when estrogen is low, those are problems. And it's the mental benefits and the physical preservation benefits that you get from therapeutic dose, the energy, the libido. You take a woman's estrogen away, there's no libido. There's vaginal dryness, there's discomfort in having sex, there's no wanting sex, there's no orgasms. There's just the desert's dry, because the messaging to the woman's brain is she's no longer in her reproductive prime, so those things aren't necessary. But it's the estrogen levels that tells the brain where a woman is in that place. So by me restoring my hormones, I have a libido. I have that pheromonal exchange. I have good orgasms, multiple. Can I say that? Um, because my brain is in that place. My brain thinks I'm in my reproductive prime. And if my only, and many women say this, oh, all the benefits I get from this is so much more. And just to have a period bleed 3 to 5 days out of the month is nothing. And it's not bad periods. Most women have had bad periods and they don't want them again. And they think that, oh, if I go into menopause, all my day will be saved. No, you're just at the beginning of your misery. It's the depression, the mood swings, the irrational behavior, the negative ruminating thoughts, the weight gain, the you name it, the misery. Women with plenty of estrogen are not miserable. And so the benefits women get by restoring their estrogen is just so much greater than having a period. So if a
Okay.
woman's on hormone therapy and has horrible menstrual cycles, then her hormones are not balanced.
Now I was thinking about though how to market to the minds to understand when you was talking just now. Because you were saying that how you can push this thing further and the benefits of it. So if we gotta speak to like the advantage of doing that now, because I don't think people really understand the advantage. Basically, you just say what you just say just now, like, yeah, really, you get all these things that comes back.
Oh, you get your brain, you're happy all the
Yeah.
time. People don't piss you off. I mean,
People
it's
want
like
that.
it's nice to have a stable mind. It's nice to depend on myself. It's nice to know that when I read something, I'm going to understand what that is. It's nice that if somebody's going to give me instruction, I'm going to get it.
Hmm.
And it's just, and there's an energy in women who have estrogen, and people come to you instead of trying to walk around you. That's one thing I know. I never realized that people don't realize that they avoid estrogen deficient women. There's some physical
Mm.
characteristics of an estrogen deficient woman that just subconsciously people will avoid her. The lack of subcutaneous fat, the demeanor, the facial expressions, which women to stay away from. And those women are estrogen deficient. I'll tell you, you give that woman estrogen, You won't walk around her. You'll approach her. You'll look her in the eye. I couldn't believe how many people were looking me in the eye after I had estrogen. I didn't realize how many people avoided eye contact and how much I avoided that. It's crazy what good estrogen does for a woman. Not just the woman, but everybody else that she comes into contact, whether it's the person on the other side of the counter, the cashier, or the
Mm,
family. Everybody, but when I say everybody benefits from me taking estrogen that's in my life, I'm not lying. Every woman should have the opportunity, the choice to fully restore her estrogen, not just be given these little minuscule doses with patch therapy. And
mm,
that's the difference. So when women who are on patch therapy, which is a lot of women on low dose estrogen therapy, and if those when those hormones stop working, it's time to get on a therapeutic dose. Find a doctor who knows how to fully restore estrogen that gives a woman enough, that tells her brain that she's really in her reproductive prime, not an old lady dying out.
mm. Well, being that you say you're 60, over 60,
I'll be 60 next month.
you look very well for 60, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes,
I
yes.
feel better than I've ever felt in my life mentally.
Mm,
It's just nice not to be tagged with mental illness or have to suffer with that every day or even
mm,
a little bit, not even a little bit.
mm. Wow. We're gonna wrap up, Marie. I think this is such an education for me right now because I'm just listening because I'm like, let's go, give me some feed me with that stuff because like this is very information. I understand some of the terms, but then when you start breaking it down with the connection to other people, then it start make more sense to me as a man just listening. So I appreciate you trying to share that and make like bring that message across for me to really understand because I don't think we really know how that impact women. And then if we feed that behavior when we understand what it is, like, oh, just like when somebody's hungry, you can tell, like, I need to feed this person because this person's hungry. But now you're saying, like, wait, this person is low on testosterone or
Yeah.
estrogen. Yeah, this person needs estrogen, so I need to feed this person estrogen. Like,
Same thing
it
with
start
blood.
making sense now.
Yeah. And in men, they'll get grumpy. Those old men that are just grumpy and crotchety and cranky, they don't have testosterone. You give an old guy testosterone and he's like a happy camper. He wants to
Mm,
go do things. He doesn't want to just sit on the couch and he doesn't fall asleep after supper. He wants to go do things.
mm,
Same thing. Everything that I talked about today with estrogen in women holds true for men and testosterone. And
mm,
we should all be demanding full hormone restoration. Give me back my hormones that tells my brain I'm alive, not in a state of living decay.
mm. No, if you had to wrap up and give us your biggest takeaway and give away from this conversation, what would it be?
I would just your theme today is dreaming, both men and women. If you really want to put some good dreams together, literally like sleeping
Mm,
so well that you're dreaming again, or
mm,
when you're awake, you're actually dreaming of your future and all the things that you want to create. Just restore your main sex hormones. It is such a life changer.
mm. And closing question. What is that one thing or two thing when people do drive you crazy?
What are one or two things that would what?
What is the one thing or two thing when people do it drive you crazy?
Ignore their hormones.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just it things don't drive me crazy anymore like they used to when I have estrogen. And when you get information about this, it would drive me crazy if you know that you can feel better, or at least get the message that you can feel better if you get enough of of your main sex hormone, testosterone for men, and estrogen for women, and don't do it. Everybody in your life pays the price for that.
Hmm,
And so that's what drives me crazy is, oh, I don't know if that's for me. It's like
hmm, hmm.
there's only very few people that the hormones don't work for, and they're usually people who don't want it to work.
So we can say that there's a lot of people out there in the world starving from testosterone and estrogen. There's a starvation happening.
Yeah, we call it estrogen hunger. It's actually when I talk to physicians about
Mm-hmm.
est- how the symptoms that women are telling them and how to read that as estrogen hunger. The body's still hungry for estrogen. Like when a doctor says, "How do I know if my patient has enough?" They'll tell you if they're hungry for estrogen. They'll tell you if they're hungry for testosterone.
Mm,
You'll hear it in their symptoms, and then they calm down when they have enough. There's no more hunger
mm,
uh, for that because they have plenty.
mm.
And there's
Marie,
too much and too little. It's like hormones are like Goldilocks. There's too much and too little, and then there's the just right. And I'm talking about the just right.
Mhm.
So
Marie, it's a pleasure chatting with you today. You
you as
gave me
well,
so much
Asher.
education. Yes, a lot of education for me. I'm gonna go listen to this again a couple times. I got a few people I need to share it with right away. I'm like, hey, you gotta listen to this. Like this lady done dropped the gems on me today. I'm because when I used to hear them talk about it, I didn't really understand it. I didn't really understand what they was talking about as far as so like one of my other friends, she had a lot of pain, like a lot of pain with her cycle and stuff. I'm like, it just like was really off. So I'm like,
Yeah, there's no pain with estrogen. Estrogen actually regulates pain, the pain
mm-hmm,
receptors. It's amazing. So
mm-hmm,
yeah, so yeah, send them my way and I'll be happy to send them in the right direction and what they need to
mm-hmm,
do and where they need to go. So yeah, I do offer that free consultation at menopausemoxie.com.
mm-hmm. Thank you so much,
You
Marie.
bet. Thank you for
All right,
having me.
folks. You tune into Pandora's Awareness podcast, a place where we collect stories and circulate life changing wisdom. And today you got some insight, some hindsight, and some foresight from Marie. And I hope you guys take it and make it an awesome week.